Good morning. Let's see. Make sure I didn't screw up my audio settings again. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Well, I hope that you have had a good morning so far. I have had quite an interesting morning, and I will tell you to expect a lot of big changes soon. It's been one of those mornings where I know that God is telling me to do some big stuff, and it is a bit terrifying. Um, so yes, expect some big changes soon. I'm not sure what yet, I'm not sure when, not sure how, but expect it to happen, and it will be very good for us. But we're going to go through Genesis 44, 45, and 46 today. I've got some good notes for us to go through, and it should be fairly short compared to most of the recent ones. We've gone pretty long lately, but I'm going to try to condense it a little bit more today. And we will open up in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your mercy. God, thank you for placing me where I am and placing all of these wonderful people with me in this group on this mission. May you bless them and keep them safe, healthy, and whole, and guide them in your way and your will. And God, please guide me as to what you are calling me to do. As I feel it, I know it's coming. I know that I am going to be disrupted. And God, may you just please guide me and bless me with patience and humility and wisdom, and just give me the right words to say. And just please, God, give me the help that I need in whatever form that needs to come my way. And God, please continue to bless this mission that we are on for you. And let us hear from you each step of the way. Let us be blessed by you each step of the way with your knowledge and your mercy and your grace. And God, may you please bring peace to all of our hearts and our souls, and just, God, bring peace to our minds. God, just thank you so much for all that you provide for us. Thank you so much for being our God and for bringing us to you and for using us to bring others to you as well. And God, may I please be used by you as much as I need to be used, as much as I can be used. Let me be used by you. And God, just protect us, keep us all safe, healthy, and whole. And thank you so much for letting us hear from you today. In your name, amen. Whew, okay. Alrighty, my friend. Let's dive right in, shall we? Okay. We are going to change to ESV today. It's funny to see how the titles are different in the different translations. Oh my gosh, sorry. I have like something in my eyeball. You know, it's that Joseph tests his brothers as the ESV, and then it said Joseph's Cup was the title. Kind of the same thing, though, as we will discover. All right. So, actually, I have a question for you. Have you read the entire plan today already? Yes, okay. So we're going to do this a little differently today. Because I expect that it is a bit tedious listening to me read the whole thing, especially if you've already read it. So here's what we are going to try today. We are going to go down and kind of break down the chain of events. And I'm going to talk you through some of the important takeaways here. And especially since it's just you and I think that is a perfect way to go about our plan today. All right. So Joseph tests his brothers. So in Genesis 44, excuse me. In Genesis 44, we see Joseph testing his brothers again. They have come back. They have Benjamin, right? And he sends the brothers away, but he puts their money back in their sacks again, and he puts his cup, which is called the Cup of Divination, which I will explain in a moment, into Benjamin's sack, right? The Cup of Divination is so in the Egyptian culture, divination was basically like fortune telling, and what they would do is they would have a cup, they would fill it with like water or wine or whatever, and they would drop something into it, whether it be like a coin, whether it be some oil, something to disrupt the water and see what the water does, and then they would look into the water, see what it looks like, and they would use that to try to foretell the future, right? They would try to foretell whatever they think the cup is trying to tell them. So the Cup of Divination was very important in that culture. We don't know if it really was a Cup of Divination for Joseph because, you know, as we see throughout all of this, Joseph stays very true to, oh my goodness, to the true faith, to God, right? He doesn't really adhere to the Egyptian culture very much. But in the Egyptian culture, the divination was a huge, huge thing. And so the Hebrews would have known that. The brothers would have known that divination was massive. And on top of that, stealing the Cup of Divination from anybody, stealing the tool that is used for divination, would lead to death. If you stole the Cup of Divination from anybody, you would be put to death if you're caught. So when Joseph put the Cup of Divination into Benjamin's bag, he is testing his brothers. He goes and he chases after them, and tears apart, you know, he looks into the bags and everything to see, he goes from the oldest to the youngest to see who has the cup, and he tells them, somebody stole my Cup of Divination. So of course they're freaking out. They're going, oh my gosh, I don't know who took it, but whoever took it will be, you know, put them to death. Absolutely, they're guilty. You know, there's no other explanation if one of us has it. So Joseph goes through, he goes from oldest to youngest, searching their bags, and then finds it, of course, in Benjamin's bag. And this is a test to see what the brothers are going to do. This is a test to see if the brothers are going to protect Benjamin or if they're going to treat him as they treated Joseph 20 some odd years ago, right? So when they find it in Benjamin's bag, we see Judah step up and say, don't kill the boy, take me, you know, make me your slave, let the boy go home, I will stay with you. So he offers to take his place. He is the only one that offers to take Benjamin's place, okay? So that's important. And then Judah says something. He says, and Judah said, what shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak, or how can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of our servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. So Judah's comment here, where he says, God has found out the guilt of your servants. He's talking about all the brothers, right? And so this means a couple of things. First, if they were caught with the cup, there's no, how do you get out of that? How do you say, no, I'm not guilty, I didn't take it, he didn't take it? It's in his bag, right? And they don't know how it was put there. But also, he is assuming that this is God's way of basically holding them accountable for the sins against Joseph, right? So when he's talking about being found guilty, it's how can we defend ourselves against this? But also, God is obviously using this to punish us for what we've done before. So he's kind of admitting the guilt of the past. But his reaction also shows that he has changed since then. The fact that he is not mean, he's not cold-hearted, he's not of the same nature that he was before when Joseph was sold into slavery. So this is a huge moment for them. And of course, Joseph is like, no, the one who has the cup is going to be the one that I take and is going to be my servant. I will take him. Another kind of push, like, okay, let's see what they will continue to do, right? And then that's when Judah comes up and says that he will take his place. Don't take him. My father will surely die. I cannot disgrace him. I cannot let him down. I promised he would go home. He needs to go home. Take me instead. Let me take his place. Huge change. Also, we see Judah is a natural leader. Judah's clan, the clan that comes from Judah's line, ends up dominating all of the clans of the other brothers. So Judah is not the oldest, but he is the leader of the pack, and he does end up, his bloodline ends up becoming the dominator of all of the other brothers. And that's a big family to be head of, obviously other than Joseph. Also interesting to connect is that, remember, Tamar, the daughter-in-law, had the two sons. So if she had not had those sons go on to become very, very important figures of domination, like King David, and of course Mary and Joseph. So very extra important people in our history, and they stem from Judah. So it's just an important connection. Judah is a natural leader, and he does end up actually becoming kind of the leader of the family, and his descendants are very, very, very important. Okay. In Genesis 45, we pick up where Judah had offered himself in place of Benjamin. Joseph cannot handle it. He can tell that the brothers have changed, and he is overwhelmed by it. So he finally tells them, I am your brother. I am Joseph. I'm here. I'm alive. It's me. And he sent all the servants out so nobody could hear and nobody could see and everything. They could be alone. And the brothers are so shocked by this. They assumed that he was dead by then, and they were immensely shocked. And here is where we kind of see just this huge heart of forgiveness. Again, Joseph is just such an amazing example for us in pretty much all that he does. He's just such an amazing example of how we should behave. And one thing I absolutely love about the entire story of Joseph is that even though he was sold into slavery, he was abused, he was accused, he was put in prison, he had a very, very tough life, right? For many years, he just was thrown down. But you know what? The lies and deception and selling of Joseph from his, oh my gosh, from his brothers, and everything that happened to Joseph, all the suffering that he endured, would eventually lead to Joseph saving his family and saving the lives of so many people. everything that happened led to Joseph being put into the position that he's in, and he ended up being put over all the land of Egypt, and he was able to save people from dying from the famine. He saved all of Egypt with his plan. He saved beyond Egypt because they were feeding people from Canaan. They were feeding people from all over that would come and buy food from Egypt. And if it weren't for Joseph, none of that would have happened, right? But everything that led to Joseph being there was essential to getting him there, right? And that's one thing that I feel like we definitely kind of take for granted a lot of times is we are where we are thanks to all the struggles that led here, right? Just because tough stuff is happening, just because we may be suffering, just because we have a tough go at life, doesn't mean that God doesn't have a bigger plan ahead of us. Because he does. He absolutely does. And he uses our suffering to build a bigger plan, to build that bigger vision that God has and God sees and God knows. Like he knows what's going to happen and he uses us in these ways. So, for Joseph's slavery and imprisonment and suffering to lead to saving so many people and essentially fulfilling the promises of God is such an important thing to acknowledge and to remember that God uses us in the same ways, right? Also, there's a point where let's see where it's the brothers called Joseph the father of Egypt. And that was like that was saying that he is the advisor. He's the advisor of Pharaoh. And one thing too that is just so amazing about Joseph is he's not angry with his brothers. After everything that he went through with his brothers, he forgave them. And his heart was so full and so just overwhelmed and joyful to be with his brothers again and to forgive them and just love them. And he welcomed them into his home. He sent them out, and Pharaoh welcomed them, his entire family, and brought them into the land of Egypt to live with him, and so that Joseph could take care of them through the famine. I think that Joseph in this particular chapter, there's such a good one thing that I'm going to try to do more often is connect how will this relate to us with our mission in the gaming world, because that's a huge part of our mission here is we're trying to connect how do we tackle the difficulties of mixing our faith with the gaming world. Well, in this area where Joseph does not get angry, he forgives them and he embraces them. I think for one, that's an incredible example. You know what? If Joseph can not get angry and can forgive his brothers after everything they did to them, can we use that as a good example of how to treat other people in our gaming? Because let's face it, there's definitely people that really can make us angry, that really can kind of set a fire under our feet a little bit, and we may not be very nice about it, right? We may want to lash out. We may want to have retribution for whatever is being done, and it could be the smallest thing. I'll tell you an example. If, in ESO, for example, if somebody steals a note out from under you, if they come and snatch a chest that you were fighting something off for, if, you lose in a battleground or you get killed a zillion times in a row trying to fight something. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? You can get really frustrated and you can lash out and you can just let that anger determine what happens next. Or you can use Joseph as an example and say, you know what? Not a big deal. I can forgive. I can let go. I can move on. And I can be so full of joy and I can enjoy what is happening, right? So we get to choose how we respond to that. And I love this quote that was in my notes in my study Bible. It says, God gave Joseph the wisdom to understand that his rejection, slavery, and imprisonment had accomplished the purposes of God on a much larger scale than had those hardships not occurred. And I just love that. I just absolutely love that. And I think if you take nothing else away from Genesis 45, it is that you can receive that wisdom for yourself to understand that, rejections or slavery or imprisonment or hardship, suffering, wrongdoing, somebody breaks your heart, somebody hurts you, somebody abuses you, somebody speaks ill of you or to you, somebody does something to you that you don't particularly like, or that really puts you in a very terrible situation and you have to go through a hardship. Those hardships will accomplish the purposes of God on a much larger scale than if they had not happened. It's just a way of looking at it. God will give you that wisdom if you ask him for it and if you want to receive it. So that's just so powerful to me. Our suffering leads to so much more than we could ever imagine. How we doing? Doing good? You like the short version? Okay. All right. So Genesis 46, we see that Joseph sends his family out to go get his father and all their herds, all their sheep. They are They are shepherds, and that is their profession. In Egypt, that is considered a very unclean profession, and they, all the shepherds and everything, they reside in, oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking on the name now. Goshen, there we go. They reside in Goshen. So Goshen is the land where all of the farmers are. And what happens here is Joseph removes all of the residents of Goshen for his family to take over that land. And this is like right outside of Egypt. It's still part of it. It's still part of the Egyptian kingdom. But it's also like right on the border of it. So it's kind of an easy out. The intention here is they will reside with Joseph throughout the famine so that he can take care of them, make sure they survive, they are well fed, they are well cared for during this famine. They have the free will to move on. They have their free will to leave whenever they want to. They are not captive. They are not enslaved. They are not forced to stay here. They can leave whenever they want to. But it's important to recognize that they choose to stay, and they have grown so comfortable and living in Goshen that they end up staying there long enough to get imprisoned and enslaved by the Egyptians much later. But it's important to recognize that that was their choice to stay there. And it was not the intention, though, for them to stay there, right? The intention was that they would stay here through the famine and they would go back home to Canaan. They didn't do that. They stayed. So eventually that leads to the imprisonment and the slavery of the Hebrew people. This is where that begins, right? And that's, of course, much later down the road. We'll end up reading about that, but connecting the dots there for you. When they're leaving Canaan, Jacob, aka Israel, has a dream that is very similar to Joseph's dream when he had just left and been enslaved for the first night. And the dream was basically God telling him, "You will inherit this land. I will take care of you. I will lift you up. Um, Go and do this thing, and I will make sure that you prosper." So he gives Israel the same dream, the same message. So, one question that I want to pose to you is kind of swinging back to the fact that the Hebrews got so comfortable, and they got so comfortable that they stayed right where they were, even though that wasn't the intention. That wasn't the plan that God had for them necessarily. He had wanted them there to be protected, to survive through the famine. Excuse me. But they chose to stay there, and eventually they were enslaved. And my question for you is, are there areas of your life that you choose to stay right there out of comfort and complacency? Are there areas in your life where maybe you're a little too comfortable where you're at, right? So in those areas, it is so important to recognize that God is not calling on us to be comfortable. God is not calling on us to stay where we are. God needs us to be uncomfortable so that we can grow. If we are too comfortable, we can't grow, right? And this is a perfect example. They become too comfortable, and what happens? They end up being slaves to the Egyptians because they chose to stay where they were comfortable rather than going back out to the promised land and flourishing and doing what God bid them to do, right? God calls on us in all kinds of ways. And one area is He will disrupt us where we are most comfortable because we need to grow. So that's just something to think about. You said yes, there are areas where you might be a little too comfortable. So why don't you take some time to evaluate that and see what God might be calling you to do, and maybe you've been so comfortable that you're just not even hearing it. I know that there's definitely been areas like that in my life. And right now I'm definitely feeling that disruption. And I was very, very comfortable in my routines and my day-to-day, and God said, "Nope. You're not going to stay comfortable where you're at. You are going to do this thing, and you are going to grow, and you are going to help others grow." And it's just something really, really important, really valuable to think about. Being uncomfortable is not a bad thing. Being uncomfortable means that is an area in which you have so much room to grow. So don't think about it as something you need to be intimidated by or afraid of. Think of it as an area where you can improve and you can find comfort. You can find comfort in the uncomfortable, and that means that you've grown, right? If you go and do the things that make you uncomfortable, you could never imagine how much God will help you grow in those areas and grow for Him, grow within yourself, grow closer to God, grow with others. I mean, it's immeasurable what God can do when you choose to let Him disrupt you where you are comfortable. So, for a lot of things to make you uncomfortable, that just means you have a lot of areas that you get to grow if you allow God to work with you on that. And remember that you're never alone on that. God is there to help you and guide you through that every step of the way. You just have to let Him. So don't be afraid to get uncomfortable and let God work through you and work with you and work on you and work in you and help you through those uncomfortable situations and just let you grow. And it will just be amazing. I can promise you that. Um, I'll give you a little bit of it's the perfect example right here of what we're doing. I am very much an introvert. I am a homebody. I like to be private and I like to be secluded, and I am perfectly fine not going out and hanging out with people and, not going out in public and not doing really anything. I would love to be a hermit. That is where I am comfortable. I am comfortable staying home by myself, talking to nobody, just doing what I want to do quietly within myself. And God said, right? And God said, "Nope." God said, "Nope. Nope. I'm going to use you. I am going to use you for more than this. You are not made to sit here by yourself and be quiet. You are made for so much more, and I'm going to make you uncomfortable so that you can do these things and you can grow, and these other people have an opportunity to hear from me." And God can use you in the same way, but you have to get uncomfortable first. You have to. If you don't get uncomfortable, you can't grow. If you stay where you're comfortable, you won't grow. You just won't. And what are we here to do? We are here to grow. We're here to learn. We're here to be so much more than just sitting here comfortably in the same spot for our whole lives. That's just not reality, right? We're just not made for that purpose. We are made for His purpose. And to live His purpose, we have to get uncomfortable. So, bring it back. We'll rein it in for a second here, right? I think my central point of this whole reading today is A, get uncomfortable, okay? Get uncomfortable. Do what God's calling you to do. Do the thing. Only you and God know what that is. Do the thing God's telling you to do to make yourself uncomfortable and to grow. Okay? That's number one. Number two, we're here to figure out how to mix our faith with gaming. How can we take something away here? We talked about it a little bit already. Joseph is a great example of forgiveness, resilience, and following God's will no matter where we are, right? He's a fantastic example. No matter what happens, he continues to follow God. He continues to do what God tells him to do no matter what. He is surrounded by sinners. He is surrounded by people that are not of his faith, that don't believe in his God, that have all different kinds of crazy, non-God following, customs and culture. And that culture is totally against what God stands for and what God wants to do. Yet, he doesn't go and do what society is doing. He doesn't conform to the ways of that culture. He stays true to what God is telling him to do no matter what. And that is exactly what we should be doing while we're gaming. Do we ever really think about, before you became part of this, did you ever really think about your behavior while you're gaming? How you talk to people, how you present yourself, the things you say, all of that. Did you ever really think about that before? Probably not very much, because it's such a normal thing for you to behave certain ways while you're gaming, because that's how everybody does it, right? That's what everybody does. So I'm just going to do what they're doing because that's normal. But that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be above that. We're called to be better than that. And even in this atmosphere where we don't get to see face to face with other people, we don't even get to hear their voices most of the time. They may not even know that we're reacting the way that we're reacting. I catch myself, I'll be totally honest, I catch myself, somebody sneaks under me and gets a note out from under me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? They don't have any idea that I'm getting upset. But is that the way that I should react? No, it's not. Absolutely not. Is that worth that reaction? Absolutely not. Is that the way that God wants us to react? Absolutely not. Right? Slow to anger, right? Full of peace, love, kindness. Are we portraying those qualities to other people? Are we, if somebody is making crude jokes in guild chat, are we participating in that conversation? If somebody is talking disrespectfully to another player, do we step in and try to calm the situation? Or do we let them do their thing? Do we instigate it, right? Do we participate in that? Do we encourage it? Right? No. We should not be encouraging that. Okay? These are all different ways that we can definitely, and there's a million more examples that I could come up with, but it's just something to think about. If Joseph, while he is in slavery, he is in prison, he is just being thrown down for years, mistreated, abused, cast out, his family threw him in a pit and sold him on the side of the road, never to be seen again. And he was still able to be righteous, to behave the way that God wants us all to behave. If he can do that in that situation, we can do that while we're playing a dang video game, right? So something to think about as you're playing, as you are in your games, interacting with other people. Just pay a little extra attention to how you respond to something, whether it is in a text, in the guild chat, or in Discord, or if it's just you on the other side of the computer screen. Like I said, I have to stop myself fairly often. I'm still working on it, where I have to stop myself from getting all pissy with people for doing whatever it is that they do. But that's not godly behavior. That's not how we are called to portray ourselves. And whether other people see it, hear it, feel it, or not is irrelevant. Because no matter what we do, no matter how we do it, God sees it, right? So in all that we do, let it be done in love and kindness. All of it, no matter where we are. That is the biggest takeaway here. And yes. Oh, it's freaking out. Oh, did you have notes today and it's just not showing up? I know sometimes it deletes my notes for some reason. Like, it doesn't always stick. I don't know why, but I don't know if it's doing that for you or if you didn't have notes for today. So either way, it's totally fine. I just want to make sure that we go through your notes if you have them. Yeah. Oh gosh, I asked like 3 questions. Yes, you did have notes and it's just not showing them? Let's refresh. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it just didn't want to show. Okay. If Joseph could so completely forgive his brothers and love them so deeply despite everything, imagine how much more God forgives and loves us. Amen, sister. Yes. And that is such an amazing point to make as well. If Joseph can forgive his brothers after everything they did to him, forgive them, not just forgive them, but as you point out, and love them so deeply despite everything. That is an amazing example of what God does for us. He forgives us and loves us so deeply, no matter what we do. No matter what. No matter what. And that is so important to remember. Absolutely. Amen. You have anything else? Any other thoughts, comments? Wonderful. And yes, we were able to cut it a little shorter today. So I'll give you a little more time in your, I'm sure you're on your lunch break again. But thank you so much for joining me. I like I said at the beginning, we definitely will have some big changes coming up. I'm not sure how, I'm not sure what exactly, but I know that God is moving me in. Oh, I'm going to be shaken up here, and I feel it and I know it, and it's going to be awesome. As overwhelming as I feel like it is about to be, it will be awesome. And as we are learning here, God works through our uncomfortableness. He works through the areas that we were most uncomfortable and makes it beautiful. And I know that that is what is about to come tenfold. Thank you. And I highly encourage and invite you to please spread the word about what we're doing, whether it be with your guilds, with your gaming friends, with your real life friends, with your family, whoever, whatever God puts on your heart, throw it out there. Absolutely 100%. One thing that my boyfriend and I have been doing is we started sharing the Twitch address on Facebook and inviting people to join us there. So that's totally one thing you can do. It definitely takes a little bit of bravery. I know I have a lot of people on my Facebook that they do not agree with my faith. But you know what? That's okay. Because I will continue to plant those seeds wherever I go. And I highly, highly encourage you to do the same. Remember, growth comes from where we are uncomfortable. So, with that, I will let you go. And thank you for joining me. Bye!